Farhan Lalji joins us from the CFL Combine in Winnipeg. The viewers have a lot of questions. They're all excited to chat with you, Farhan. So before we get to those, how is it, man? Jim Barker looked like he was in Narnia football heaven. Is it for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. This is football palooza. You know, back when I used to coach a lot, I would kind of view this as half broadcaster, half coaching clinic, right? And I feel like that here when I would go to NFL training camps and things like that. But this is awesome. You know, and the one thing with this event is that you can just see the talent level increase every year, whether it's the U Sports guys that are doing a great job, you know, with more resources in their staffs and their training, or the NCAA guys that are coming in, or, you know, how the league has done a few things to kind of expand the talent pool a little bit. And, you know, guys getting eligible to take part in this as a Canadian that maybe wouldn't have in previous years. So it's good. And just from a networking standpoint to see all the CFL people. However, it's still Winnipeg. It's still cold. And you're still in Florida, which is BS, Rod. You should be here being cold with the rest of us.
Sorry, my man. Next year, how about that? I did see you last year at Edmonton,
you said
and that was a lot of.
year too, buddy.
I was there at Edmonton. I was there. Yeah. We won't get it. He literally walked up to me and said, "Tell me you didn't come all the way from Florida for this." And I'm like, as far as you know, yeah. I think the obvious question for me here would be, who's standing out in your mind?
Well, you know, there's a guy named Joel DeBlanco who's a linebacker and was just recently added to the draft a couple of weeks ago. And he's got a fairly storied career collegiately. He spent 6 years at the University of Cincinnati. You know, he had the extra time because of an injury season and a COVID season. And then was in the NFL for a little bit. And in fact, in 2022, he led the Seattle Seahawks in tackling during the preseason, and then was a late cut. Spent last year playing spring football, and is Canadian. His father is from Edmonton. So you know, he works and lives in the Seattle area currently, and came up, and everybody knew that, you know, he had a pretty good resume. And you've got the Alex Singleton comparisons. Well, he shows up here, cut weight down to 230, and ran a low 4.6, high 4.5 40 time. So this is a guy that has checked all the boxes. You know, he's done really well in interviews. Could go number one overall. If not, there's no way he gets out of the top three. So I think he's really impressed. There's been a couple of others. You know, you look at the receiving class, I think it's a good group. People were looking forward to seeing Ajou Ajou, who's a kid from Alberta who went down to Clemson originally, and then you know, made his way to South Florida and then another college before declaring for the draft, and didn't put up great 40 times and got injured. But there's some other receivers, Del Duncan Busby, who's from Minnesota, played at Bemidji State. You've got Kevin Clericis from the University of Connecticut. Kevin Mittal, who was the Heck Crichton Award winner 2 years ago at Laval, had a bit of an injury-plagued season last year, but is showing up and ran 4.59 at 229 pounds. So there have been some really, really good performances, and it's a pretty good offensive line class as well.
I love how you glossed over Ajou Ajou. Just so you know, Farhan, he was on this show 2 days ago, and last hour, Jim Barker said he told Ajou Ajou, if you don't get your act together, you're going to be in the last chance of life. You said some other college. We all know what that college was. Like, yeah. Right? They made a Netflix special about it. How much of a topic is Ajou Ajou at this combine? Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, he is. Look, he's got a resume, and people were looking to see him dominate here, right? Put up a good 40 time, do a great job in one-on-ones. You know, I think he tried to be humble and contrite and kind of explain the situation that got him bouncing around from school to school in the U.S., which, quite frankly, is not that unusual anymore. You know, but in his case, you know, you went to Clemson, and there was so much interest around his recruiting. And when he went down there, and Dabo Swinney had all these good things, and I talked to him about it, and he said, you know, if I had a do-over, and he probably told this to your listeners and yourself a couple of days ago, he said, if I had a do-over, I never would have left. I was too greedy. I was too immature. I wanted it now. I wasn't willing to be patient, and took off and went to South Florida, and then he got injured, and then kind of things trickled down from there. You know, and that's a cautionary tale with a lot of these people. There's a culture right now in the U.S. of guys transferring, right? The portal is open, and now it's not just an opportunity. It's now become fashionable to transfer. And, you know, we see it here because you see a lot of these guys that maybe started at the Division I level and worked their way back to U Sports or what have you. So it becomes harder to pass judgment on these guys because it's happened so frequently now. So I don't think he's a bad kid, but this is going to be a lot more challenging of a journey than I think he anticipated, because the people at this combine are good. We know the people in the CFL are outstanding. So he's got some work to do. I think there's too much talent there physically for him not to get drafted. But he put himself in a situation when he got here where he could have gone into the first round. Now he might be literally like a fourth or a fifth round pick. Someone will take him, but he's going to have to really, really grind to get onto a CFL field anytime soon.
Ajou Ajou was ahead of his time. Let's put it that way. Switching schools. But he referred to himself in the third person through the whole interview the other day. That was my
You didn't do that
takeaway.
after.
So I'm not.
You didn't do that after.
Okay.
So.
Okay, fair. Okay, you brought up U.S. football, and our viewers were writing in about the wealth of talent in American football. Why are there only 5 to 7 superstar NFL quarterbacks? Should there not be more based on sheer numbers? How would you answer that?
It's the hardest position in sports, period, full stop. If you're a Canadian, don't tell me it's goalie, because it's not. They don't need to process and have these guys coming at them, 250-pound defensive linemen where they're trying to take their head off before they can get the ball down the field in 3 seconds, right? So it is the toughest position in sports. And because of that, there is such a need. And the NFL puts players in a position where they overdraft them, put them into games before they're ready. There was a time when it was okay to not be a starting quarterback at the NCAA level until your junior season. Well, that doesn't happen now. If you're not a starter early, you're transferring, right? And these guys bounce. And then sometimes you'll get the other scenario where you'll get a guy like a Trey Lance who played 17 collegiate games, and people just looked at the talent and said, okay, we're going to draft you. So now they haven't even played enough at the collegiate level. So, and then teams give up a king's ransom to get these guys. They'll trade up, right? I mean, I remember like it was yesterday, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz's draft year. And at the end of the college football season, neither one of these players were ranked in the top 10. They weren't given a top 10 grade. By the time they went through the offseason underwear Olympics and pro days and combines and everything like that, not only did these guys go 1 and 2 in the draft, but both teams that took them traded a ton of picks to go up and get them. So now there's tons of pressure. They've got to go in and play early. You don't get a chance to sit and wait for a year like Patrick Mahomes did. Those situations are few and far between, and a lot of people just aren't ready for it. And they'll move on quick, right? I mean, you look at Zach Wilson, right? Guy got elevated, too high. He never should have been drafted that high. And he gets drafted, all this expectation. He plays early. And when you fail, you don't often get a second chance, right? Like the Baker Mayfields and even Sam Darnold, who's still getting an opportunity as a backup, like those become rarer and rarer. You just get yourself bounced out of the league very quickly. So it's a difficult situation. You look at those 2021 and 2022 draft classes, and you've got one guy, Trevor Lawrence, who's starting at a reasonable level with his team. Everybody else has been traded or just teams have moved on, right? I mean, so it is tough, and teams aren't going to wait, because if you wait and you're wrong on the quarterback, you get fired.
I love how when we get together and have time, we can talk for hours. I'll only ask you one more. Because you're on the West Coast and you cover the Seahawks as much as you do, can you sum up why the Seahawks and Russell Wilson divorce had to happen? And because of that, did you see the Denver thing coming? 2 and 3, How do you think he'll fare in Pittsburgh?
Well, look, Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, that needed to end. He was trying to exert far too much influence in that building above the player level. He was alienating his teammates. He was alienating the entire organization. That needed to end. And then he went to Denver, and I was there the first day of training camp 2 years ago in Denver, and his reputation had preceded him. The players there were all kind of holding their breath a little bit of what they were going to get. Again, had office access up on the second floor, complete control of what was going on in that building, because you had a rookie head coach in Nathaniel Hackett, and that's just not what you want. And everything was about his legacy. He got humbled last year, but obviously the relationship between he and Sean Payton soured so much that even though he had been humbled and improved slightly, they needed to move on because the coach knew that that wasn't going to be his guy. He's going to go to Pittsburgh, and Mike Tomlin is going to put up with nothing. There will be no social media team. There will be no, quarterback coach access into the building. Like there's going to be so much change for him because it's not about his legacy anymore. It's about salvaging his career. So I think the Steelers are going to get the best out of Russell Wilson. I still think he's got some good football left. I don't think he's got any great football left, but he'll be better than Kenny Pickett. And I think it'll be good for Justin Fields to come into a situation where maybe you can work with a guy that does have some experience, and Justin Fields might be the long-term answer. But see, what Pittsburgh is doing is they're building out their roster. And I think the Patriots, who have Nathan Rourke in their building, should take some advice there, or take some, learn a lesson there, because you don't want to put a quarterback into a bad situation, because they'll never succeed and you'll never get them back. It won't get figured out, like Justin Fields in Chicago. Pittsburgh is now building out their roster, and they're trying to put the quarterback onto the best team possible, as opposed to getting the quarterback figured out early, but your team sucks and the quarterback's never going to get developed. And that's what could potentially happen in a place like New England if they draft a quarterback high. Let Jacoby Brissett and Nathan Rourke carry the ball for a year. Trade back, get additional draft picks, and build that horrific roster into something better. And then if you want to inject a quarterback later, you can. Of course, if that happens, we know Nathan Rourke will never give the job back because he'll be so good. But, so I like what Pittsburgh's doing, and I think they'll get the best out of Russell Wilson.
Sounds great, doesn't it? If it was that easy, everybody would do it. It's win now.
So much pressure,
right? So,
much pressure on these teams to go get a guy early. And this is a good quarterback class, and next year's isn't viewed as one. So, and as we're talking about quarterbacks, because I know you got to run, keep an eye on Casey Bauman, the kid that's out here. Played at Montana State, played at Augustana at the Division II level. He is ripping it. Looking forward to seeing him in team drills and one-on-ones.
And he's a skyscraper too, right?
6'6", yeah.
I love it. Okay, Farhan, thanks for the time, brother. Enjoy Winnipeg.
All right, take care, my friend.
We'll be thinking of you in Florida. Farhan Lalji, live from the CFL Combine in the Slurpee capital, Peg City.